Hi, welcome to the video. My name's Dychronic, and today I'm taking a look at my top 10 PvE primaries in Destiny 2 Season of the Seraph. And of course, as always, you can still find a link to the spreadsheet that you'll see throughout this video in my Discord, link in the description down below on the channel #SpreadsheetsDocs. And again, these videos and these spreadsheets really would not be possible with my patrons on Patreon. So if you want to see them continue, please consider donating, link in the description down below, because frankly, I may have to stop doing them soon. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. Dark theme, color-coded, information about catalysts, perk recommendations, pictures, and all the stuff you want to know about these weapons, including rankings, etc. for all the stuff. Not all the weapons, obviously, because that lags out the spreadsheet, but a lot of the weapons. And as you can probably tell, if you want to know what number one is, it's right there. But the reasons why are going to be important, I'm going to talk about in this video. Moving on, let's go ahead and get started. First up, let's talk about bows. And I want to say clearly, bows are not bad. They have their very specific use. And most of the time, that has to do with the artifact. When they have overload rounds, when they have barrier rounds, we use bows for those particular things. However, in my opinion, I just don't find many situations where I'd want to use a bow unless it's at the very highest level play. When it comes to my favorite bows, I still really like Taku and Trinity's Ghoul. These are the most fun, they do a lot of bada boom damage, and of course Hierarchy of Needs I have not gotten yet, so I can't really say too much about. When it comes to the legendaries, I like the lightweight frames. Faster fire rate, as long as you can get their accuracy under control, do feel a lot better than the precisions in my opinion. Real quick, the only fusion rifle, we have the Vex Mythoclast. In my opinion, a lot more of a PvP option, still decent in PvE, but it doesn't have any particular advantage beyond just slightly faster fire rate. And those linear shots are again nowhere matched to the Hawkmoon. For the only primary grenade launcher, we have Fighting Lion, which is an infinite ammo grenade launcher, which is cool, but special ammo grenade launchers very rarely run out of ammo and do a lot more damage per shot, and are already very low DPS special ammo option. Following that, the first majorly ranked section, we have the Sidearms. And I would say in general, Sidearms are not bad as much as SMGs just feel a lot better. And frankly, even though I got Brigand's Law up to level 20 and it has Bolt Shot, I still would rather have the Achilles SMG with Bolt Shot. When it comes to the legendary options, I'm still in high favor of the adaptive 3-burst with the 2-burst close behind. And the biggest reason that is because it has some of the highest DPS output, the total ammo DPS, availability, control, and honestly, even range. Something that a lot of these single-fire sidearms really lack on. When it comes to exotic options, I would say the Traveler's Chosen definitely stands out above the rest. First of all, really good stats on a sidearm. Second of all, the ability to have it for ability-based builds. Just get a kill with the weapon, you hit the reload button, and you have a lot more ability energy. Up next, on the other side of the spectrum, we have these scout rifles. And again, I would say scout rifles are not bad, but often suffer from the same thing that bows do. They're very, very high range options, making them ideal for the highest level play, especially when scout rifles are in the artifact, but obviously do suffer at close range. Their very small, narrow aim assistance cone makes them very uncomfortable at close range, and obviously a lot less DPS than something like an SMG. And when it comes down to it, my favorite legendaries are going to be the 200 RPM lightweight frames. And specifically Nightwatch and Tarnished Metal being my favorites because of the explosive payload on both. And just a blanket statement, if you can have explosive payload on a primary weapon, get it. It is the #1 perk in almost every scenario. And that's not to say the other options aren't good as well. A lot of people really like the rapid fire 260s, although I usually prefer a pulse rifle at that kind of fire rate. The other ones just feel too slow and really bad at close range. When it comes to the exotic options, most, if not all of them, are more of a PvP kind of option. Following that, let's take a look at auto rifles, which are probably going to be the best bet for new players, that alongside with the pulse rifles. And the auto rifles have the great advantage of having really good damage output as long as you sustain that fire, being very easy to use, occupying a very large amount of range, anything from right in front of you to a decent long range, and also a lot of different options. Although personally, when it comes to legendaries, I still really like the adaptive 600s. Again, perfect in the middle zone of range, availability, of DPS output, of handling, perk options. Although again, you might find that a lot more people really prefer the 720 rapid fires. I personally find these to be much better in PvP, and in PvE just feels like I'd rather have an SMG or something that's longer range like a 600 adaptive. When it comes to the slower fire rate auto rifles, even though they have more range, they often have more recoil, worse stability, and a lot more flinch, which means the adaptives usually end up reaching to longer range anyways. And if you need more range, you might as well go with a pulse rifle that we'll talk about a little bit later. When it comes to exotic options for auto rifles, I really like Monte Carlo. For the same reason as Traveler's Chosen, you get ability stuff very easily for ability-based builds, and furthermore, you don't actually need a kill with Monte Carlo in order to get melee energy. And on top of that, it's a 600 RPM base, so it's kind of like the adaptives. Although there is technically a dark side to the auto rifles, which does prevent them from being used in the higher level play, is sustained fire fire versus peak fire. And you'll see me talk about this a few more times in this video. The fact that they have to sustain fire at their target without being able to go in and out of cover does make them a lot more vulnerable, versus something like a hand cannon or a scout rifle, where you can go in and out of cover, maintaining your output without making yourself as vulnerable. This is something they talk about in PvP and PvE alike. Up next, we have the pulse rifles, which, as I mentioned before, have a decent ability to peak shoot in and out of cover, although obviously a lot more for the lower fire rates. That being said, I still think that the best of the best for the legendaries is going to be the 540 rapid fires, which is again rare for me because I usually prefer more towards the middle. The rapid fires, especially with the piece of mind crafted that I have and the grid skipper roll that I have, just feel really nice. They allow you to feel comfortable at close and mid range, and even farther range than that of a 600 RPM auto rifle. Although a bit of a caveat here is that if you get a poorly rolled 540 pulse rifle, it often feels very bad. Get a good roll and they feel great. Other than that, the adaptive 390s are great for higher level play if you find that you need more range. Great control, great availability, great handling, great stability and range, a great little middle zone. And of course, at number 10, I kind of have like a smear of different options: the 450 lightweights, the BXR's 450, and the 450 aggressive disparity, all of which are still doing pretty well in the meta. I just kind of clumped them all together. And you should also keep in mind that a lot of different pulse rifles, including the 340s, may be usable for what you're doing. These are just my favorites. When it comes to the exotics, none of them really stand out very well. I'm very disappointed in Collective Obligation. Does a lot of void debuff stuff, but just not as good as you would want it to be. And Outbreak Perfected, in my opinion, just severely outclassed by Hawkmoon and requires sustain. And following that, for the second best category, we have the submachine guns. And submachine guns have changed a lot over the years, making them a lot more controllable, and especially as a controller player, I've really grown to love a lot of these SMGs. And honestly, would using it anything that's high level and below. Although I personally would not be using it in the Grandmaster Nightfalls, although you could. When it comes down to legendary options, my personal favorite going to be the aggressive 750s. Again, perfect middle zone of range, availability of handling, mag size, perks, and now we have more craftable options in the form of Ikelis SMG and Blood Feud. Really close behind that, we have the lightweight 900 RPMs, which a lot of people might prefer. You move faster with these weapons, they have better just crunch because of faster fire rate, but they do lack a little bit of range. And the rest of them, I really don't like. The adaptives and the precisions are just really not that great. When it comes to exotics, there's a lot of really good exotic submachine guns. Huckleberry, Teraba, Wrist Runner, all very fun SMGs, but really not what I'm looking for in a top 10 for PvE primaries. Although Teraba can still absolutely shred bosses and majors, it's kind of ridiculous. My favorite exotic SMG is definitely going to be Osteo Shriga at number 7, may even deserve a higher and better slot. It's just so much fun, lots of poison, lots of explosion, very easy to level up, very easy to just get kills by accident. I'd say, again, the one big downside is that it doesn't solve a big problem at the high level play, like for example specific champion rounds or incredibly high damage. And in the final category, in my opinion, the best category, we have the hand cannons, which might be a bit of a controversial pick, but I still am fervently behind hand cannons being a PvE option, even though most people might think that's more of a PvP option. And the reason why I've picked hand cannons are as follows. First of all, hand cannons, some of the best peak shooters in the game. In and out of cover, maintaining your DPS, especially with 140s and 120. Secondly, a good amount of range while handling decent at close range as well. Thirdly, a high skill floor, but also a high skill ceiling. If you can get those crits, the crit modifier being much higher than the other weapons, you're going to end up doing a lot better outputs, better than pulse rifles and auto rifles. And fourthly, a well-rolled hand cannon feels night and day compared to a poorly rolled hand cannon. And to be honest, the difference in stats there are not massively significant, but enough to really feel the difference. When it comes to my favorite legendary options, I like the adaptive 140s the best by far. The 180s don't have enough clip size, they don't do enough damage, they don't have enough range, and honestly, peak shooting is not very viable with them. The 120s obviously suffer pretty heavily from handling and reload issues, but might be used for their higher range in Grandmaster. 140s, perfect little middle zone. Good range, stability, handling, availability, perk options, and of course, different options for craftables. Although I would like more energy options because Jowlies is kind of meh. When it comes to the kings of the kings, I would still say that Fatebringer, Ice Luna, Outstringer, and Palindrome are definitely the kings, with the Exalted Truth and Rose looking to come in very close to these options, although I definitely need to use them a lot more. And when it comes to the different exotic options, there are a lot of fun ones like Ace of Spades, Thorn, and Sunshot, but in my opinion, Hawkmoon is going to be the only one that really pierces through the crowd. First of all, obviously, it's a 140 base hand cannon with incredible stats, making it a decent alternative to a lot of these different legendary options, but it also has that Paracausal ×7 shot that does nearly Izanagi's ×4 Hodo damage as a primary weapon. And on top of that, we have hand cannon in the artifact, making it an ideal option for Grandmaster Nightfall. And of course, let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions about this video, if you grab me weapons you think I may have overlooked. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, a big thank you to Mom and Dad, Cooper Shaw, Robert Scherer, Monday, Sue Barkins, Junior Panther, Casey Reckon, Mark Sliver, fellow support on Patreon, and that's it. Hope you guys did enjoy. My name is Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.